Okay, so we have here the WS8032B1 from batch 11279. We're ready to prepare two peel panels using the wire that we prepared just a few minutes ago. You can see this end has that slight blue haze to it from the primer. I've gone ahead and labeled each piece of wire so that each panel will be identifiable. We'll later, of course, mark them in a more indelible manner. This is just for initial record keeping. Our sealant is pre-mixed, ready to use. I've cleaned the panels by the standard flood, scrub, flood, and wipe method. I have here just a spatula for applying sealant and a draw tool for when I have it in the jig. This is our standard peel panel manufacturer jig. It is milled to the dimensions in AS 5127/1, which are the same as what will be in the comparable BATS spec. So I think we're about ready to get this on the road. You just slide the panel in here. This should give us about a 1/8 inch initial depth before placing the wire down on the sealant. I always get just a little bead of sealant and work it into the surface nicely so that we don't have any air bubbles or anything in the base layer, and so that we get a nice intimate contact to do what we can to make sure that the adhesion is good.
1 inch.
Oh yeah, we leave 1 inch at the top of the panel. That's for an area for our universal testing machine to be able to grasp it when it comes time to pull the panels. So there's my initial base coat, and I just run a little bead on the leading edge here. I don't have to make that too fancy. This is what I will draw across the panel to get to the appropriate 1/8 inch depth. I do spread it out just a little bit so that it spreads evenly in one pass. It doesn't necessarily have to be in one pass, but it's just easier and faster. One technique that I've developed over the years is as I draw across, I actually lower the angle of that tool. That helps ensure that you get an even coating without any gaps towards the end. I get the extra sealant off of the drawing tool, and that's what I apply to these wires. I'm working on a stainless steel table here. If I had been on our wood benches, I would lay down a piece of mylar or something, but this stainless steel cleans up nicely. So I just gently work the sealant into the wire here. I'm not pushing down really at all. I'm just kind of letting the weight of the sealant work itself in. When I push down with the spatula there, I was just running a bead across the wire. There was minimal contact between the spatula and the wire. And I work it into the other side. Same thing, I just get a bead of sealant on the leading edge and kind of reduce the angle as I work across. That helps work the sealant down in at the end of the wire. There seems to be a conception that you have to really push hard to get the sealant into the wire. To the best I can tell, that's just sort of a remnant from when it was common industry practice to use cotton duck rather than wire screen. With the wire screen, the pores are so large here that the sealant really just almost drips in. It doesn't take much effort at all to fully wet these things. And so the less we traumatize that surface with the spatula, the more of the primer that will actually remain on the surface to help promote adhesion. So, again, it might be hard to tell. I was really low on sealant there, but I was doing what I could to minimize scraping contact. And then I just kind of give it a little tap, a little draw down. What I'm looking for when I do this is to see that these pores get filled with sealant. When I scrape the sealant on over the tabletop here, when I lift the wire, these pores are usually empty. So just a gentle pressure, because we don't want to affect that 1/8 inch dimension too much. We'll make sure that the sealant comes up into the wire's pores, and then that way when it's ready to cover with the top coat, we'll get full contact of the sealant to the wire without inducing air bubbles in the pores here. So same thing as when I was getting into the thickness, but now instead of this draw tool, which fits on this inner lip, I'm now using my spatula, which fits on these outer lips, and then just draw the sealant across. And you can see I didn't have quite enough there. It's easy enough to remedy. I'm just going to add a little bead of it there, and a little bead up at the leading edge again. and then just draw it across, and this should come out totally clean. There we go. Now, when we raise the panel out of the jig, there will be a little bit of sealant around the outer edges. It's nice when we immerse these to have a smooth edge on the end. You can see we have some slop around the sides from where it broke from the sealant left on the jig. I'll just run the spatula on the lower corner of the panel here. I found over the years that if we scrape that upper corner, it exposes the edge of the panel in a way that might negatively impact the test results. If I just scrape across that bottom corner, the sealant sort of wraps around that top edge and helps protect it from any corrosion that might damage the results of the test. So that's the first one done. Same thing, we just get the second one down in the jig. Get a small bead of sealant here to kind of work onto the surface firmly. And I'm just going for full coverage more than anything else. It doesn't have to be a work of art at this stage. This next step though, I'm running close on sealant here. So this next step, I like to start at the top edge, work it up to around that line that I set when I put down the initial base coat. Pull it down. Again, I'm not making it perfectly even, I'm just sort of working it to where the next tool will be able to finish the job quickly. So as I pass, that angle decreases slightly. I get good, neat, full coverage there. And then this extra bead of sealant, I actually have more than I will need for the wire, so I'm going to put about half of it back in the cup and then come back and treat the wire. So, a way to get this done a little more easily, you could just lay a bead of it on the leading edge like that, and then just draw that bead across. Same thing, descending angle. You can see everything's fully filled right now. As I release it up, I don't know how well that'll pick up, but most of those pores are empty. We turn it over, you can see there's still some dry spots, but this is mostly covered already just from the sealant that was on the bench. So I'm going to get a little more of the sealant off the bench. Same thing, leading edge. And then I'm hardly putting any pressure on. I'm just letting the springiness of the spatula do most of the work. And then roll it onto the wire. As I rolled that on, there was very little grittiness, I guess you could say, from the texture of the wire. And now I can smooth that on. Again, little to no pressure. I'm really just trying to pull the sealant into the pores there. Same thing with the second piece of wire. I'm actually going to scoop all of that up and just apply it on. So I'm just doing it in kind of one step there instead of dropping the bead on and then working it together. So this bottom side, the way I do it, my habit is just do this bottom side second. This is the one that's almost always touching the sealant. So I just keep an eye on it, make sure it looks okay. Up here you can see these are pre-filled. That could lead to issues with air bubbles if you're not careful in how it's applied. However, you can see it's just going to be a very small section up here, and most of that's going to be above the line of the sealant. And if you're careful with how you apply it, it's really a non-issue. So now, I just need to get the rest of the sealant out of this cup. I weighed it kind of narrowly here. We have probably about a walnut-sized lump of it left to work with, which should be just enough. Get it near the surface, just sort of run the bead down a little, and then draw across with the spatula. And there we go, our second panel. And then when I release it out, like I said before, I like to clean up these lower edges just so that it looks a little nicer and it's a little easier to stack them to insert them in the immersion jar once they're cured. So then that's that. Everything else left now is just cleanup.